It's not letting. Oh, it's going up.
Oh my god.
Just as we thought we'd had enough of natural phenomena, reports of some extraterrestrial objects abducting people on Earth surfaced. As terrifying as they are, they still leave one in doubt of any existence of alien life. What could be residing outside our solar system? Well, this man asked an extraterrestrial what's the purpose of existence, and this video tells you all about the reply he got. While such alien abduction reports were not taken seriously in the past, at least after the Second World War, recently reported occurrences have made the US Pentagon change its attitude towards the strange flying objects. Unidentified flying objects, UFOs as they are popularly known, are inexplicable objects that appear in our skies. Not only that, but they've also been reported to appear underwater and in space. The Pentagon, which controls the US military, has had some pilots encounter such flying objects, but they've been reluctant to make official reports due to fear of ridicule or stigma. UFOs are referred to as flying objects because they can move and change locations. Initially, claims about the possibility of UFOs were treated as some form of conspiracy theory, especially following an event when a US Air Force balloon crashed near Roswell in 1947. The balloon was confused for a UFO. The US government quickly debunked the claims. It was not until 1961, when Barney and Betty Hill reported the first alien abduction story in the world, that the government continued investigating the claims. However, millions of Americans and people across the globe have claimed to have seen or known someone who has seen an unidentified flying object or a UFO. In fact, an increasing number of them believe they've actually met with one or two aliens. One such person is Calvin Parker, who decided to speak up about his experience after 45 years. He claimed to have been abducted by some aliens while fishing on the Pascagoula River at the age of 20. According to him, he summoned the courage to speak out because the event affected his life in some ways. But did he really have the encounter he claimed to have? Or could it be that he was having a dream or probably fell into a trance? Let's keep watching to learn about his experience. You can also let us know your thoughts in the comments. It was October 11th, 1973 when Calvin Parker, alongside his friend Charles Hickson, got off from work and decided to go fishing off a pier on the west bank of the Pascagoula River in Mississippi. It was just getting dark, probably around 6 o'clock. Suddenly, Parker noticed two flashing blue lights reflecting off the water. What could be the source of the light? They had thought the lights were from stars or some law enforcement officers were on their trail, probably to ask them to stay off the property. However, upon looking up, he realized that the source of the lights was a craft that was only making a hissing noise. The sound was not that of a plane. It was just a quiet humming noise. Suddenly, he saw four creatures without legs float from an oval-shaped object which was between 30 to 40 feet across and 8 to 10 feet high. The creatures were tall and had robotic slit mouths and large heads. Their hands were shaped like the claws of a crab. He couldn't clearly see their faces as they were just blurred. One of the creatures wrapped its claws around his arm, leaving him terrified. Then he went numb. The same thing applied to his friend as he was also grabbed by one of the creatures. Parker and his friend later found themselves in the craft in a dream state where physical examinations were carried out on them. Two of the aliens were telepathically talking to him, and he would hear the answer he would give back. According to them, the examinations were a routine of what will happen in the future. When he challenged them about their identity and mission, the aliens simply said they were travelers. For Hickson, the friend, he noticed what appears to be a television with a crystal inside. As he moved, the crystal followed him as if it wanted to examine him. Suddenly, he lost sight of the creatures and slowly began to regain mobility. He floated out of the ship and his body slumped to the ground. It is important to note that while the two men went numb, they did remember what happened. At that point, the examinations were over. Hickson then saw Parker on the riverbank. As Hickson was about to talk to Parker, he heard another whizzing sound. Reactively, he turned around only to see the ship lift higher before vanishing. Hickson claimed he heard a voice in his head, supposedly coming from one of the creatures, telling him that they were peaceful and meant no harm. Parker and Hickson got back into their car and realized that the abduction only took about an hour. They were confused and had to relax to regain their consciousness. They decided to reach out to the United States Air Force, where the attending voice informed them that the Air Force no longer worked on UFO cases. How would they share such an experience, and who would believe them? People would only think they were under the influence of alcohol. Nevertheless, let's continue with the account. Realizing that help was out of reach from the Air Force, the two men contacted the Jackson County Sheriff's Office to report the incident. They were asked to report to the station to hear more about their story. Upon getting to the station, the investigators realized that the two men had puncture wounds on their arms. This led credence to their story of getting grabbed. Despite the evidence, though, the investigators still found it difficult to believe their story. Who could have believed such a story when Hickson's breath smelled of whiskey? All the investigators would say was that they were drunk. They then made both of them take a sobriety test. To their utmost surprise, both men passed the test. It was at this point that they started to believe their story. They didn't stop at this, though, as they requested that Hickson take a polygraph test. He did and passed again. Parker also passed a voice stress test. At that point, there were no other means of verification, and the investigators had to believe the story completely. The experience completely transformed the lives of the two men. When Parker realized that the event had put him in the spotlight, he changed jobs and relocated to other towns. He couldn't live with the stigma that followed the ordeal as the news spread. Thus, he became a recluse. On the other hand, Hickson didn't shy away from the attention. He went for interviews and talk shows discussing the ugly events of that night. And thinking that the ordeal was over, it would begin another series of experiences. A year after the event, Hickson decided to visit a friend out of town. He and his friend went hiking and hunting in the woods. At some point, he became alone in the woods and noticed the alien he had seen that night come near him. Again, he heard a voice in his head reiterating how they meant no harm. The voice later informed him that they would communicate again. Though the experience again sent some fear down his spine, he got home telling his wife he was no longer afraid of the strange creatures. A month later, he heard the same voice telling him to tell the world how they will help it in the future. Then, a few months later, Hickson's family, 8 people altogether, were traveling to his parents' farm, which was just a few miles away. On their way back, they noticed a strange light in the sky, just like what Parker and Hickson saw on that fateful night. The light moved in front of the car. It was at this point that they realized it was a UFO. Everyone got scared. Then Hickson heard another voice in his head. "Go, there will be another time, another place." That marked the last time he heard the voice before his death in September 2011. This near-death experience took Parker 45 years to reveal. According to him, as soon as he got home from the station originally, he poured bleach all over himself. To him, it was a form of cleansing. It is therefore not surprising that he had a nervous breakdown 3 weeks later. He ended up being hospitalized. 2 years later, he had another nervous breakdown. Parker claimed to have received several warnings about a possible plague, which will kill millions, cause food shortages, and people will fight and steal other people's things just to survive. This could be likened to the COVID-19 pandemic that plagued the world in 2020. Apart from this, he claimed to have received a vision of World War III in light of the Russian-Ukraine war. All of these were shown to him during his abduction experience. 7 years after the death of Hickson, Parker published a book sharing his experience. He told the world that he had been lying about him being blacked out. He actually remembered everything, but had to lie to avoid answering everyone's questions. Here's where he had a change of mind. He attended a funeral where he met people he had not seen in many years. Remember, he had to relocate to avoid talking about the experience. He felt that he was the main focus of almost everyone at the funeral. People recognized him after he signed the registry at the funeral, so he had to leave the scene. Then his wife told him to write about it. He eventually agreed after considering the occurrence at the funeral, the feelings of clarifying speculations people have had about the incident at the river, and most importantly, his health. Parker recounted how he had had a close shave with death. He described how he was attacked by one of the aliens, a female. According to him, the UFO scratched his eyes with her long fingernails. He strangled her after she shoved her finger up his nose in retaliation. Parker said in one of his sessions, "She's evil, she's really evil. I can see destruction. I'm able to see things that I've never seen before." However, despite the near-death experience, Parker described the feeling as the best he has ever had in his life. To him, the book would relieve him of some weight, while it would be enlightening for his family, friends, and others interested in hearing his side of the story. A year after the book was published, a Mississippi woman contacted a media source to inform them that she too saw a UFO in December 1973. Since then, many witnesses have been coming out on their experiences with the aliens. Now the question is this: where did the aliens come from? How far did they travel before they saw Parker and his friend? Why did they come for those two? Are these aliens friendly as they told Hickson? Are they on Earth to protect the human race from destruction? If yes, what form of destruction? These are questions we may need help finding answers to. Now, while being a protagonist in an alien abduction story could come off as portraying one as a special being, it is difficult to live with the possibility of being tagged as possessing some mysterious powers. Either way, the story of Parker is just one of the many reported alien abduction cases, as reports of close encounters continue to persist. So back to the question, what is the purpose of existence? When Parker asked the aliens this question, they answered thus: the universe you're residing in was part of something great, something special. Life and death don't exist. You will always love it. You are part of something much greater. We are here to observe. There is still time. What do you think about the existence of UFOs? Is it time to start taking the stories more seriously? Or could Parker and Hickson have fantasized about the encounters? Make sure you let us know what you think in the comments section below.